Hello everyone, I'm Zoe Storm, the Sustainable Laboratory Promotive Guest, the Glasgow University Environmental Sustainability Team. I'm very excited to introduce you to Jen Barrie today, who's the Senior Research Technician on Level 3 of the Institute of Infection, Immunity and Inflammation here at the University of Glasgow. In 2019, Jen's lab became the first lab to be awarded a LEAF Award, where LEAF stands for Laboratory Efficiency Assessment Framework, recognizing them as a sustainable lab. The lab actually achieved a LEAF Silver Award, which is an enormously big achievement as they were also the first lab to be assessed at the University of Glasgow, and as such they formed part of our pilot study in 2019. Not only did they manage to save 86.7 tons of CO2 by becoming a sustainable lab, they also calculated financial savings of £5,642. And Jen very kindly agreed to speak to me today regarding her experiences with becoming a sustainable lab. So thank you for that, Jen, and welcome. Just to start off, could you tell me a little bit about your current job and introduce your role and day-to-day life as a senior technician, and also maybe just a quick summary of what kind of research your lab does?
I'm a research technician in the Neuroimmunology Research Group within the Institute of Infection, Immunity and Inflammation. I do experiments, I analyse data, kind of just like a research associate or assistant. It's not much different. I'm at the bench quite a lot of the time. Our lab investigates the causes and potential treatment for a syndrome called Jen Barrie syndrome, which is a rare neurological disorder in which the body's immune system mistakenly attacks its own peripheral nervous system, causing a spectrum of neuromuscular and sensory deficits, including paralysis.
Yeah, just kind of to get straight into the sustainability side of things. Why is sustainability in general important to you?
It's on the news all the time. We're killing the planet. We can't continue the way we're going. We have to make more sustainable choices. Even here in the West, we're seeing acceleration and compounding of catastrophic events like widespread droughts, wildfires, followed by devastating floods, landslides, and that's not even considering what we're doing to the rest of the planet, like the Amazon rainforest or any rainforest. Ice caps are melting, sea levels are rising. It's just horrendous. So we have to do something.
And do you think a general interest in sustainability is necessary in order to undertake a project to make your lab more sustainable?
It probably isn't. I mean, if somebody told you what to do and you just did it, then you could make the changes without being interested, but I would find it hard to imagine that you wouldn't then become enthusiastic about it when you see the changes that you've made and the difference that can make.
Yeah, I mean, you'd hope everyone's interested in sustainability and in making labs or their workplace more sustainable in general. So throughout the time that I've known you, I've come to see that you are very passionate for sustainable labs and about sustainability in general. But why do you think sustainable labs in particular are so important?
Well, modern labs have a huge carbon footprint compared to other workplaces of their size. They use 5 to 10 times more energy, at least 10 times more water, and vast amounts of single-use plastics. Most of which go to landfill just because of the health and safety aspect, that they're contaminated. They can't go into a kind of recycling waste stream. So as researchers, it's essential that we take steps to improve efficiency, reduce waste, reduce energy usage, and do as much as we possibly can to reduce the environmental impact of our work.
I definitely agree with that. What do you think then the biggest motivators would be for becoming a sustainable lab?
Well, on a personal level, it's just to become more environmentally friendly, to add to your whatever you do in your outside of work life. But at an institute level, it saves money. But particularly with the LEAF, it allows you to make a statement about increasing your green credentials, how much CO2 you've saved. And I think as time goes on, that's going to become more and more important that institutions can do that and prove to the public that they are making a difference, that they are trying.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. LEAF is aiming towards kind of getting the same recognition as some other programs, in that it might be required in like 5 years' time or something for you to actually be LEAF certified as a lab to be awarded grants and funding and stuff. So it's definitely going to become more and more important on that level as well. So when have you first heard about S-Labs at UFG and about LEAF? And can you walk us through a quick summary of the process that you then underwent to become a sustainable lab?
We first heard about the S-Labs and LEAF through yourselves, guest. Mm-hmm. Before that, however, in 2016, within our institute, we had started an eco group, just because a few of us were concerned about, wastage and the landfill. So it was Ellen Bird at the time was the sustainable lab promoter, and she came up, gave us a visit, guided me through the process. We decided that to try and do the process on the entire building was just going to be a wee bit big, but it was the first time anyone had done it. So we decided just to do it on one level, and that was the level that I work on. So it was basically fill out baseline estimates, how much general waste do you use, how much have you reduced it, how much recycling do you do. I also fill in open initiatives, things that we had done that weren't measurable, but that would make an impact. It was fairly straightforward.
And can you tell us about a few changes more specifically that you had to implement to become LEAF certified?
To be honest, a lot of the changes we had already implemented because we had set up the eco group. Before we set up, we only had general waste bins in the lab or autoclave bins. So we got a whole load of recycling bins. We took away half the general waste bins, so all, paper, card, plastic sleeves, clean plastics, nothing contaminated, washed out media bottles could be recycled rather than go to landfill. We set up the traffic light system for equipment on or off, red, don't turn it off at all, amber, end of the day, green, after you've used it. We put signs on fume hoods, lowering the sash, encourage people to defrost their ultra-low temperature freezers. Put out information. We had a web page, we have a web page, we put out stuff on social media just to, generate interest and put out, hints and tips.
And what challenges did you face in this process of becoming LEAF certified and of making your lab more sustainable, and how did you overcome them? Like, for example, what changes did you find the hardest to implement, and which changes met the most resistance?
We didn't really come across any difficulty in becoming LEAF certified. We went immediately to silver because of the amount of changes we had already made, and it really wasn't difficult. We ticked all the boxes. There wasn't anything that we had to really up our game in. The biggest challenge was convincing people to increase the temperature of their ultra-low temperature freezers. We got real kickback about that. People were just really reluctant. And many still are, actually. But, there's more pilot studies coming out, more research being done about how your samples are safe, basically. And also about how much money you can save. I think somebody worked out it's £300 a year just increasing the temperature by 10 degrees from -80 to -70, and that's per freezer. But generally, I think when you put changes in place, people just accept it eventually. You'll get a few mumps and groans and why are we doing this, and but eventually it just becomes normal. The thing is that the freezers are owned by the principal investigators, the PIs, so we can't actually change them. So we do depend on each group having someone in it that'll push for it. So yeah, some people have changed, other people haven't, but we will continue to try.
You formed an eco group before you even started with becoming LEAF certified or anything like that, which is great. In general, on top of the eco group itself, would you say that others in your lab were supportive of the process? And would you say that it was more of a top-down process, or was it something that really everyone pursued together?
We had a good core in the eco group. There was a good representatives from every floor who were pushing change. I mean, things like, reducing the number of general waste bins and all that kind of stuff. We just went ahead and did that. We didn't give them the option. So, they had to make those changes. So, yeah, I mean, most people, they were happy, well, it didn't grumble too much. It doesn't really matter what it is. People are always sceptical. But if you put it in place, they'll do it. And then that just becomes normal.
Yeah, well, hopefully sustainable labs will become the new normal. That is what we're working toward. So has working towards a formal LEAF certification helped your lab in becoming more sustainable, or do you think it would have been easier doing it without such a framework?
The best thing about LEAF is that it gives you an actual readout. So although we had made the changes, we didn't have anything that we could prove had made any difference. Mm-hmm. So going through the LEAF process, we could see how many tons of carbon we had saved and how much money we had saved. And that gives you hard evidence to convince, the management to embrace even more improvements.
Absolutely, and evidence in numbers probably also helps a lot on a science basis, and in a science lab people like numbers.
They do. You've got to have the data.
So after becoming LEAF certified and making the required changes to do so by working with your eco group, how have you managed to maintain your efforts regarding sustainability and to keep your lab sustainable?
Well, obviously during the COVID restrictions our efforts were on hold a bit, but then again, nobody was in the lab, so we weren't generating waste, which was good. However, since then, we've reinvigorated the eco group, so quite a few members, former PhD students, have graduated and moved on, so we have many new members, and they're all enthusiastic, which is great. And then this week, in recognition of COP26, we are launching a Sustainable Labs competition within the 3 I's. So it'll run to the end of the year. Labs will gain points for making positive changes for sustainability, like increasing the temperature of their ULTs, having chemical inventories where they share, to prevent people buying chemicals that they don't use, they can just borrow. Defrosting freezers, putting signage up around the lab on energy use, turning things off, closing fume hoods, all the usual. And then for the winners, there's a pizza party.
Yeah, that's great. So obviously your lab has already become LEAF certified and has already made quite a few changes towards sustainability. Yeah, do you think maintaining those changes is easy?
Most of it becomes normal, so people just do it as a matter of course. I think, when new people start, they maybe have to be introduced to it and encouraged to take part. But most people, I would say, that have started recently already have done it in other labs. Once the bins are in place, the signs are in place, you just have to keep, give people a wee nudge now and then.
And then overall, would you say becoming and staying a sustainable lab is worth it?
It's not hard. It's even easier now than it was when I did it. And it's absolutely worth the effort. Really is worth the effort.
That's encouraging to hear, I'm sure. And what would your vision be regarding sustainable labs at U of G or in general for the future? What do you think still needs to be done, and where does the push for S labs need to come from at U of G?
Ideally, I think we want every lab in the University of Glasgow to be LEAF accredited. I think actually when you look around the web at what other universities are doing, the University of Glasgow is really quite far behind. We're not at the forefront yet, but we can be. It just needs real engagement from heads of departments. I think, having the principal and senior management group saying we're climate activists and all that doesn't really filter down to individual labs. So I think we do need, heads of institutes, heads of departments to really grind down on this and push it much, much more. It has to become a priority. We need a culture change across the sector. I think funding bodies, as you mentioned earlier, have to make it a requirement for funding that you have sustainable practices. There's a lot to be done.
Yeah, absolutely. I totally agree with all of what you've just said. Finally, just as a last question, what advice would you give anyone who is looking to become a sustainable lab?
Get in contact with guests. You're the people with all the knowledge and the links. So yeah, go ahead and do it. It's not difficult. It's great.